The wind howled through the mountains like a wounded beast. Snow was falling heavy, each flake sharp as a needle. The path was gone, buried under white layers, and only jagged rocks stood against the storm. Deep inside a hidden cave, an alien mother held her child close. Her body shook, not only from the cold, but from hunger and fear. Her child was small, thin, and weak. The boy's skin, pale and fragile, looked almost transparent under the dim light of the cave. His stomach made no sound anymore. It had been silent for 2 days, and silence was worse than crying. Crying meant strength. Silence meant the body was giving up. The mother pressed her child against her chest. She whispered softly in her alien tongue. Words meant to comfort. Words meant to promise that tomorrow would be better. But she knew tomorrow might never come. Her own lips were dry, cracked like stone. Her arms trembled as if they no longer belonged to her. She had given the last piece of dried root to her son yesterday. Since then, there was nothing. The cave was dark except for a faint glow of frozen crystals on the walls. Every sound echoed, the drip of water, the shuffle of stone, the child's weak breath. The mother's ears caught each noise like a knife. She feared predators. She feared the storm outside. But most of all, she feared time. Time was the enemy that stole her son's life with every passing hour. Her eyes looked to the cave mouth. Snow blew in, white dust against the black. She thought about leaving, about walking into the storm to search for food. But the mountain outside was endless death. If she left her son alone, he would freeze before she returned. If she carried him, the wind would tear him from her arms. She was trapped between 2 kinds of death. The child stirred. His small hand moved weakly, fingers brushing her arm. His lips parted, and a whisper escaped. Mother. The word was soft, almost broken. It was not a plea for food. It was not even a question. It was only a call, as if he wanted to make sure she was still there. Tears filled her eyes. She wiped them quickly because tears wasted strength, and strength was all she had left to give him. She kissed his forehead, her lips burning against his cold skin. She wanted to tell him they would survive, but her throat closed. Lies were too heavy to carry when the truth was this cruel. The wind outside grew stronger. It sounded like footsteps, heavy and slow, moving across the snow. The mother froze. Her instincts screamed danger. She pulled her child tighter, shielding him with her body. Her heart pounded so loud it drowned the storm. For long moments, nothing happened. Then came another sound, a crunch of boots on frozen stone. The noise was closer now, at the cave entrance. A shadow stretched across the ground. The mother's alien eyes glowed faintly in the dark as she hissed low, ready to defend with the last of her strength. The figure stepped into the cave. Tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in thick furs, his face hidden under frost. His hands carried something long, a walking stick or maybe a weapon. He paused when he saw them, the strange, thin creatures pressed against each other in fear. The mother stared back, her chest heaving, her arms clutching her child like a shield. She thought of predators, of hunters, of men who killed for sport. Her body screamed at her to fight, but she could barely stand. The stranger lifted his hand slowly, palm open, showing it was empty. His breath fogged in the freezing air. His eyes narrowed as he took in the child's condition. For a moment, no words passed. The cave was silent but for the storm outside. The mother waited, torn between hope and terror. Was this the end or a miracle? And then the child coughed, weak but sharp, breaking the silence. The stranger's head snapped toward the boy, and something changed in his face. It was not the look of a predator. It was not the cold stare of a hunter. It was something else, something the mother had not seen in a long time. It was concern that the cave was heavy with silence, broken only by the storm outside. The alien mother tightened her grip on her child, her body trembling with fear and weakness. The figure at the cave's mouth stood still, letting the wind whip around him. Snow clung to his shoulders, his beard frosted white. He looked like a man carved out of the mountain itself. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The mother's mind raced with thoughts. Should she run deeper into the cave? Should she attack with her bare hands? Her son's fragile breathing reminded her she had no strength for either. She could only watch and wait. The human stepped closer, his boots crunching against the frozen rock. He moved slowly, not like a predator hunting prey, but like someone approaching a frightened animal. His eyes flicked from the mother to the child, and he lowered his walking stick to the ground. His voice, rough from the cold, broke the silence. "Are you alive in here?" The words were strange to her ears, human words she could not fully understand. But tone needed no translation. His voice carried no threat, only cautious concern. The mother tilted her head, confused. Humans were stories in her tribe, stories told with fear: invaders, destroyers, dangerous wanderers. Yet this one did not sound like the monster from those tales. The child stirred, coughing again. The sound made the man's jaw tighten. He slipped one hand into the pack at his side and pulled out something small, wrapped in cloth. The mother's alien eyes narrowed as he slowly unwrapped it to reveal a piece of bread. Dark and rough, but real food. Her throat tightened. Her body screamed for her to grab it, to tear it apart and feed her starving child. But fear held her back. What if it was a trick? What if the bread was poisoned? The man seemed to understand her hesitation. He tore off a small piece and placed it in his own mouth. He chewed slowly, showing her it was safe. Then, with steady hands, he held the rest out to her. The smell hit her nose, warm and earthy. Her child's eyes opened weakly, following the scent. His lips parted, a silent plea. That was enough to break her fear. With trembling hands, she reached forward and snatched the bread. She pressed a small piece to her child's mouth. The boy chewed slowly, as if every bite cost energy, but his eyes lit up with the faintest spark. The mother's chest shook with relief. She whispered a prayer under her breath, words of thanks, even if she was not sure to whom she was speaking. The man watched, his expression unreadable. After a moment, he lowered himself onto a stone near the entrance. He did not push closer, did not demand anything in return. He simply sat, letting them eat. Outside, the storm raged. The wind screamed like a dying beast, but inside the cave there was a new sound, the quiet crunch of bread between weak teeth. It was fragile, but it was life. The mother looked at the man again. She wondered why he was here, wandering in this deadly place. His clothes were heavy but worn, patched with care. His pack was small, not the kind of supplies a rich traveler carried. He did not look like a soldier. He looked like someone who lived rough, surviving with little, yet he had shared his food with strangers. The mother's suspicion did not leave, but a tiny flame of hope lit inside her chest. Maybe fate had sent him. Or maybe fate was playing a cruel trick. She did not know yet. The man leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His eyes met hers. "You can't stay here," he said, his words slow, as if hoping she would understand. He pointed toward the cave walls, then toward the storm outside. "You'll die here." She could not understand his words, but she understood his gesture. Her heart clenched. She wanted to scream at him that she already knew. She wanted to tell him she had no choice. The child coughed again, breaking the thought. The man stood and paced a few steps, looking out at the snow. Then he turned back. His hand tapped his chest and he said, "Human." He pointed at himself. The mother blinked. Human. The word was sharp, familiar from stories. She whispered it back, her voice rough. "Who?" "Man." The man's eyes softened. He nodded. For the first time since the storm had trapped her, she felt something strange. Not safety, not yet. But possibility. The boy's head rested on her chest, crumbs of bread at his lips. His breathing was still weak, but it was steady now. The mother held him close, staring at the human who had walked out of the snow. Was this the end of their suffering, or the start of something even more dangerous? The storm outside gave no answer. The storm outside did not ease. Snow blew like knives, filling every crack and shadow of the mountain. Inside the cave, 3 lives shared the same breath. The alien mother still held her child close, the crumbs of bread pressed to his lips. His chest rose and fell slowly, fragile but steady. The human sat near the entrance, his back against the stone, his eyes sharp as if guarding the cave from unseen threats. Hours passed, measured only by the howling wind. The mother's mind was full of questions. Why had this human come? Why had he helped them? Was it mercy or pity? In her tribe, humans were said to be dangerous, greedy, always taking. Yet here was one who gave food without asking anything back. At last, the human moved. He stood and stretched his shoulders. Then he pointed outside and shook his head firmly. His voice carried over the storm's roar. "Not safe here. You'll freeze." The mother did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. His eyes were serious, and his hand swept from the cave toward the distance. He wanted them to leave. Her chest tightened. Leave? How? She was too weak. Her child could not even walk. She shook her head slowly, clutching the boy tighter. Her lips parted, whispering, "No." The man frowned. He looked at them again, long and hard. Then he pulled his pack open and took out a thick blanket made of fur. He walked toward her slowly, like someone approaching a wounded animal. The mother hissed low, protective, but her body had no strength for a fight. The man knelt in front of her, spread the blanket wide, and gently wrapped it around both mother and child. Warmth seeped into her bones, shocking her with sudden comfort. She blinked, stunned. The man's hands were rough, but they moved carefully, as if afraid to harm. Then he made a gesture pointing to the child, then pointing to his own back. He crouched, showing his shoulders, as if offering to carry the boy. The mother's eyes widened. Her instincts screamed not to trust. But then she looked down at her son. His small face was pale, his breath shallow. He would not last long in this cave. If she stayed, he would die. If she went, maybe they all would die, but maybe not. Her heart pounded. She had no choice. Slowly, with trembling arms, she lifted her child. She pressed a kiss to his forehead, whispering a promise she was not sure she could keep. Then she placed him against the human's back. The man tied the blanket around the boy, securing him firmly. The child's weak arms slipped around his neck. The mother rose next. Her legs shook under her own weight. The man reached out, steadying her arm. She almost pulled away, but his grip was strong and steady, not forceful. It reminded her of roots holding ground against the storm. Together, they stepped toward the cave mouth. The storm greeted them with fury. Snow slapped their faces, the wind trying to push them back inside. The mother gasped at the cold, but the human pressed forward. His boots dug deep into the snow, his body leaning against the wind. He moved like someone who had fought storms before. The mother stumbled behind him, her bare feet freezing with every step. The human noticed. Without hesitation, he stopped and untied the second cloth from his pack. He wrapped it around her feet, binding them like shoes. She stared at him in shock. In her world, no stranger gave such care. Step by step, they pushed into the white wall of the mountain. Every sound was swallowed by the storm. The path was invisible, only endless snow. The mother's breath came sharp and painful. She wanted to collapse, but every time she faltered, the man slowed just enough to let her lean against his strength. The boy stirred once, whispering something weak and broken. The mother almost cried when she heard it. He was still alive. Still fighting. The human glanced back at them, his face hidden under frost, but his eyes steady and determined. He did not speak. He simply walked, as if carrying both their lives was now his duty. The mother followed, half in fear, half in hope. The storm screamed above, but deep inside her chest, something else whispered, a thought she had not dared to believe in for days. Maybe they were not walking toward death. Maybe, for the first time, they were walking toward life. The storm swallowed the mountain whole. White walls rose on every side, and the wind screamed so loud it felt like the earth itself was breaking apart. The human pushed forward, each step sinking deep into the snow. On his back, the alien child clung weakly, hidden under the blanket. Behind him, the mother stumbled, her breath short, her legs heavy, but she refused to stop. The snow cut their skin like knives. The mother's eyes burned, her vision blurred by frozen tears. She could barely see the man ahead of her, but she followed the dark shape of his body like a lifeline. Without him, she would lose the path in seconds and vanish into the storm forever. The human stopped suddenly. His head turned, scanning the storm. He raised his hand, signaling her to stay still. The mother froze, heart pounding. She could hear nothing but the wind, yet his eyes narrowed as if he sensed something. Then came a sound, a deep, low growl carried on the storm. The mother's blood ran cold. She knew that sound. Mountain beasts, starved and wild, hunted in storms like these. They waited near caves and paths, preying on the weak. Her arms trembled as she clutched the blanket tighter around her shoulders. The human pulled a blade from his belt, its edge shining faintly even in the blizzard. He stepped in front of them, his body like a wall of flesh and bone against the storm. The growl came again, closer this time. A shadow moved in the snow, then another. Shapes circled them, low and fast, blending with the storm. The mother's heart raced. If they attacked, she could not fight. Her child would not survive. Everything depended on the stranger now. The beasts lunged. The human spun, his blade flashing. One creature yelped and fell back, blood marking the snow. Another rushed from behind, but he swung again, cutting it off. His movements were sharp, trained, not clumsy like a traveler. He fought with the precision of someone who had done this many times before. The mother could only watch, fear and awe mixing inside her. She had never seen a human fight, only heard the stories. Now she saw the truth. Humans were not just dangerous. They were relentless. The beast circled again, snarling. The man's chest heaved, his breath fogging the air, but his stance never wavered. He shouted something into the storm, a sound strong and commanding. The beasts hesitated, ears flat, eyes wary. Slowly, one by one, they slipped back into the storm, leaving behind only their growls and the marks of their claws. Silence returned, heavy and cold. The man lowered his blade, wiping the blood with snow. He glanced back at the mother and child. His eyes were hard, but his face softened when he saw their terror. He nodded once, as if to say, "You're safe." For now, the mother's legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees. Her chest shook with sobs she had held back for days. She pressed her lips to her child's head, whispering thanks. When she looked up at the man, her eyes burned with a new feeling, not fear, not suspicion, but something close to trust. The man walked back, kneeling beside her. He placed a hand on her shoulder, firm but gentle, urging her to stand. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but the words of her language would mean nothing to him. Instead, she simply nodded. He helped her rise, then turned back into the storm. His figure moved ahead again, steady and unbroken. The mother followed, each step filled with exhaustion, but also with determination. If this human could fight the storm and beasts, then perhaps he could fight fate itself. Hours dragged on. The storm never eased. The mother's body screamed for rest, but her heart pushed her forward. Every time she stumbled, the man slowed just enough for her to catch up. Every time she faltered, he glanced back, his eyes telling her silently, "Don't give up." At last, through the blur of white, She saw it. A faint light, flickering against the snow. A flame, her breath caught. Shelter, fire, life. The human pushed toward it, his shoulders heavy with the boy's weight. The mother's chest swelled with desperate hope. For the first time since the nightmare began, she saw more than death waiting in the snow. But hope could be cruel. Sometimes light was a trap. Sometimes the flame meant another danger waiting in the dark. The mother held her son tighter and followed the human into the unknown glow. The glow in the distance flickered like a heartbeat. Through the storm's white curtain, the alien mother could barely see it, but her chest tightened with hope. Fire meant warmth. Fire meant life. Her child's weak body leaned against the human's back, his small breaths faint, but still there. She prayed the flame was real, not a cruel trick of her starving mind. The human pressed forward, his steps heavy but steady. Snow clung to his beard, his shoulders weighed down by the boy, yet his pace never faltered. The mother stumbled behind, her body numb from the cold, her eyes fixed on the light dot. As they drew closer, shapes began to form. A wooden hut, half buried in snow, stood crooked against the mountainside. Smoke drifted weakly from its chimney, the glow of fire seeping through the cracks. It was real. Shelter. The mother's legs nearly gave out from relief. She caught herself on the frozen ground, forcing her body forward. She would not collapse now. Not when hope stood so close. The human reached the door first. He banged his fist against the wood, loud over the storm. No answer came. He banged again, then shoved the door. It creaked open slowly, the hinges frozen stiff. Warm air, faint but real, spilled out. Inside, the hut was small, built from rough logs. A fire burned low in the stone hearth, casting long shadows across the walls. The place looked abandoned, tools left in corners, blankets thrown over a broken chair, a pot still hanging above the flames. Whoever had lived here was gone. The human stepped in quickly, lowering the boy from his back onto a blanket near the fire. He crouched, checking the child's chest. The boy's breath was shallow but steady. The warmth of the room wrapped around him, chasing away the deathly cold dot. The mother stumbled inside after him, her body shaking. She fell to her knees near the fire, her hands reaching out as if she could pull the heat into her very bones. Tears ran down her face, hot against her frozen skin. For the first time in days, she felt her body thaw. The human moved with purpose. He fed the fire with logs stacked near the wall until the flames grew bright. The shadows danced higher, filling the hut with light. Then he opened his pack, pulling out the last of his supplies: dried meat, another piece of bread. He placed them near the mother, nodding firmly. She looked at the food, then at him. Her instincts whispered not to trust, but her son's face silenced those doubts. She broke the bread into tiny pieces, pressing them gently to the boy's lips. His mouth moved slowly, but he swallowed. A spark of life returned to his eyes. The mother pressed her forehead against his, whispering words of love in her alien tongue. Relief washed over her like warm water. The human sat across from them, silent, watching. His eyes flickered with thought, as if weighing choices. He had saved them from the storm, fought beasts, and shared his food. But why? The mother wondered if he had a reason, or if he was simply different from the humans she had heard about in fearful stories. The storm outside still raged, but inside the hut there was peace. The fire's crackle filled the silence, a rhythm of survival. The mother leaned back against the wall, exhaustion pulling at her, yet she forced herself to stay awake. She could not trust sleep. Not yet. The human noticed. He stood and walked to the door, pulling it shut against the wind. Then he dragged a heavy beam across it, securing it. His actions were calm, practiced, as if he had done this 100 times before. He returned to the fire, resting his back against the wall. Their eyes met across the flames. No words were spoken, but a silent understanding passed between them. For now they were bound together, not by trust, not by choice, but by survival. The boy stirred again, whispering something too soft for the human to hear. The mother caught the word. It was her son's first real word in days. Safe. Her chest broke with quiet sobs. She kissed his forehead, holding him tight. The human closed his eyes, letting the fire's warmth seep into his bones. He knew the storm would not last forever. And when it ended, choices would come, hard choices. But for tonight, 3 lives rested inside one hut, with one fire keeping the darkness away. Morning came slow. The storm outside eased, the howling winds fading into soft whispers. The world beyond the hut was still buried in white, but now sunlight broke through cracks in the clouds. For the first time in days, the mountain looked calm. Inside the hut, the fire burned low but steady. The alien mother sat with her child wrapped tightly in the fur blanket. His face had color again, faint but real, and his breathing no longer rattled like death's whisper. She stroked his hair gently, her lips trembling with relief. Across the room, the human stirred awake. He sat up against the wall, his hand on the hilt of his blade out of habit. His eyes opened, scanning the room before resting on them. He seemed tired, but strong still. The mother watched him quietly. She did not know his name, but she knew his strength. She knew he had carried them through the storm, fought beasts, and shared his food when he had so little himself. Still, fear lingered. What did he want from them? Why risk his life for strangers? The human stood, stretching his shoulders. Then he pushed open the hut's door. A flood of white light poured inside. Snow stretched across the mountains, high and endless, but the sky was now clear. The storm had passed. He turned back to her, pointing to the sun, then to the mountain path. His message was clear. It was time to leave. The mother's chest tightened. Leave? Go where? She had no home to return to. Her village was far, and even if she reached it, she feared what they would say about a human savior. Her kind did not trust humans. They would call him dangerous, unworthy, maybe even her enemy. Yet without him, she and her child would already be bones in the snow. The human packed his belongings quickly. He slung his pack across his shoulders and looked at the boy. The child's eyes blinked open weakly, gazing at him. Something softened in the man's face. He stepped closer, kneeling beside the boy, and spoke softly in his rough voice. You'll live. Strong boy. The words were strange to the mother, but the tone was clear. She felt her throat tighten. Before she could respond, the human froze. His head snapped toward the window. Outside, faint shapes moved across the snow figures, dark against the white. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling silence. The mother's blood chilled. She pulled her child closer, her heart pounding. Were these beasts again, or something worse? The figures drew nearer, and their forms became clearer. They were not animals. They were people, aliens like her. The human's jaw tightened. He gripped his blade and shifted into a defensive stance. His body tensed, ready for battle. The mother realized his fear. To him, these were strangers, maybe enemies. To her, they were kin, but that did not bring comfort. Her tribe had little mercy for weakness, and even less for humans. The group approached the hut, their weapons gleaming under the sun. Their eyes scanned the doorway. One of them shouted in their alien tongue, words sharp as knives, "Who hides inside? Come out." The mother's breath caught. She wanted to call out, to tell them it was her, but fear gripped her throat. If they saw the human, what would they do? Would they strike him down before she could explain? The man looked at her, his eyes steady, asking silently, friend or foe? Her heart twisted. This was her moment. She could choose to reveal him, hand him over, and maybe secure her own safety. Or she could stand with him, the stranger who had carried her child through death's door. The voices outside grew louder, footsteps crunching closer. The mother rose slowly, her child still in her arms. She stepped in front of the human, placing herself between him and the door. Her body shook, but her voice came out strong. "They saved us," she whispered, though he could not understand her words. Then she turned toward the door, ready to face her own kind. The human stayed silent, but his grip on the blade loosened slightly. He understood enough that the door rattled as someone outside tried to push it open. The mother's pulse thundered in her ears. This was no longer about surviving the storm. This was about choosing who she truly trusted. The hut's door shook under the weight of fists pounding against it. Snow dust fell from the beams. The alien mother stood tall, her child in her arms, her body shielding the human behind her. Her legs trembled, not from the cold this time but from fear. She knew her tribe. They hated humans. If they saw him here, they would call him an enemy, not a savior. The door creaked open, and 3 figures stepped inside. Their alien armor was rough, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim firelight. Spears and blades were strapped to their backs. The leader's gaze landed on her first, widening with shock. "You live," he said in their tongue. His voice carried disbelief. Then his eyes shifted. He saw the child wrapped in fur, weak but breathing. Relief flickered across his face. "The boy lives," the mother nodded, her throat tight. She wanted to explain, but before she could, the leader's gaze moved past her. His eyes fell on the human standing in the shadows, blade still in his hand. The leader's expression turned cold. "A human," he spat. The other warriors hissed low, stepping forward, hands on their weapons. The air grew sharp with tension. The human's stance tightened. His blade rose slightly, ready to defend. He knew this look. He had seen it many times, the look of people who wanted him dead before knowing his name. The mother's heart thundered. She stepped forward quickly, raising her free hand. "Wait, he saved us." Her voice cracked, but she forced it louder. "Without him, my son would be dead. Without him, I would be frozen bones in that cave." The warriors froze, their eyes narrowing. The leader sneered. "You expect us to believe that? Humans bring death, not life." The human said nothing. He kept his eyes locked on them, his blade steady. He was outnumbered, but there was no fear in him, only the same calm resolve he had shown against the storm. The mother's child stirred weakly in her arms. His lips moved, whispering one word, barely a breath. "Safe," the leader blinked. His gaze shifted back to the boy, then to her. The firelight revealed her face exhausted, scarred by wind and hunger, but full of unshaken truth. She had no reason to lie. "Not here, not now." Her voice steadied. "You say humans bring death. But this one carried my son on his back. He gave his food when he had nothing. He fought the beasts with his own hands. Tell me, is that death or is that life?" The hut fell silent. The storm outside was gone, but inside, the storm of choice raged. The warriors exchanged uneasy glances. Their leader scowled, his pride wounded. To admit a human had saved one of their own was against every story, every belief. The mother took a step closer, holding her child out as proof. "Look at him. He breathes because of this man. You can call him enemy if you want. But to me, to my son, he is salvation." The leader's jaw clenched. His hand hovered near his blade, torn between hate and the truth before him. Finally, he let out a sharp breath. He lowered his hand. "Then take your human and go. Do not bring him to the village. They will not forgive this. But you owe him your life. Remember that." The other warriors stepped back, their anger simmering but contained. The leader turned and left the hut, the others following into the snow. The mother sagged with relief. Her child rested against her chest, safe for now. She turned to the human. His blade was still in hand, but his eyes met hers with quiet understanding. She stepped closer, her voice soft. "Thank you." He could not understand the words, but he understood the look in her eyes. Gratitude, trust, something deeper than survival. The human sheathed his blade and adjusted his pack. He nodded once, simple and firm, then turned toward the door. The mother followed, clutching her son. They stepped out into the bright snow together. The mountain stretched before them, vast and endless, but no longer impossible. For the first time in many nights, the mother did not feel alone. For the first time in his long wandering, the human was not only a stranger. And for the child, who whispered, safe again against the wind, the mountain no longer felt like death. It felt like the beginning of life,